Hello everyone, it's DuckFaden07 and today we are playing Soulflayer. In the new Aftermath edition we got 4 of new Soulflayers. This one costs 3 mana and it's basically doing the same thing except it doesn't have Del, and it's a 3 mana 2/2, and whenever it enters the battlefield it exiles a card from the graveyard, puts a counter on Urborg Scavengers, and yeah, he gets everything the exile creature has, like first strike, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, trample, vigilance, whatever. Okay, so um, we've got now 8 Soul Flayers to build a very consistent, very powerful Soul Flayer deck. I used uh, I used some of the one of the most popular shells played in the modern right now. It is of course Rakdos Scam. So you have Furies there, Grief, some Undying spells, Seasons Pyromancers, and that's about it from the Rakdos Scam deck. I added some Insolent Neonates. So with the Insolent Neonate, you can play this on turn 1, discard the Talpa or Samut, and play fetch. Then on your second turn, play your second fetch, and immediately play the Soulflayer. If you discarded Samut, it gets haste, double strike, vigilance, so you attack immediately for 8 damage, which is just very strong. And if your opponent doesn't have Solitude, it's a 3 turn clock. So on your turn 3, your opponent is on your turn 4, opponent is dead. So it's pretty good clock and pretty hard creature to kill. It's a 4/4 double strike. So like Solitude and Leyline Binding are probably the most common played spells that can get rid of it, but it's not easy for decks that don't play those spells. Of course, it's very similar to how the Rakdos deck usually works. By scamming Fury on turn 1, you get the same thing. Basically, if you play Soulflayer on 2, it immediately attacks for 4/4 double strike, so the effect is the same. And it's not that hard to do it. You just have to have a Neonate, Samut, and the Soulflayer and 2 fetches. So that's not like really impossible, and it can happen relatively easy. Okay, so Scrapwork, Mud, Seasoned Pyromancer are the rest of our discard outlets in this deck. Definitely needing these cards so we can get these 6 cards consistently. In the graveyard, Samut is, I think, most important one. It's also 5 mana, double strike, vigilance haster, so it is possible to cast it. I splashed two green lands in this deck to be able to do it. Okay, so it's very castable. It's a 5 mana creature with haste, and it's very castable. And I think that is why it's important to, and why this is the best option for the Soulflayer in this kind of deck that's just trying to be aggressive, going turn 1 Grief. If you can follow it with a turn 3 Scavengers or the Soulflayer, it's pretty strong and hard for opponents to get rid of both threats on time. So what else we got here? So there are 6 creatures that we want to have in the graveyard when we cast Soulflayer or Scavengers, but sometimes just having Fury and Grief is also like pretty decent, because this guy gets Menace too, and Fury has double strike, so Soulflayer with the double strike, it's still pretty good. It's a 4/4 double strike for 2 mana, so if you can later exile another card with flying or some Menace or whatever, like Grief, it can get pretty good. Also, Neonate has Menace, so Scavengers can get Menace by either exiling Neonate or the Grief, which is also very usable ability in a lot of scenarios. Okay, so a lot of abilities on the creatures here, but these are our main 6 discards that we want to put into graveyard. But also, as I said, Samut is very castable in this deck, and that's the main idea. So we are trying to do scam early, doing some drawing, discarding, making our deck more consistent. And also these drawers, discarders are also very good threats by themselves. Like you still have to get rid of the Mud, Neonate, Pyromancer, whatever. And they are doing the initial damage, and that helps later when you get the hasty Soulflayer with the double strike, whatever. Okay, so on the sideboard, we have some more discards, 2 Totsis, Necromantia 4 against combo decks, Pet to Perils and Brotherhood's End as hate pieces, mostly against Hammer Time, Scales, but also small creatures, also Pet to Peril, great against Sanctifier and Vec, Blood Moons, of course, some additional removal in Terminates and Graveyard Hate. Okay, that is it. Unfortunately, in the league I played, I didn't have these 2 Pet of Perils on the sideboard, but I think they are really important, so I think this is my final list for now, and we are going to go through the gameplay. If I had those Pet of Perils, I probably would get a trophy in the first try with this deck, but instead I got the 4-1, losing very tight game against a Humans deck. Okay, so let's go to the gameplay. I kept a pretty decent hand. I had the Neonate, I have the Scrapwork Mat, so doing a lot of early drawing, discarding, trying to find Scavengers or the Soulflayer. So not in a hurry to sack this Neonate. I think it's good to attack for a few times before you get something better to do. But the Mats, the Neonates, Seasoned Pyromancers um, really help with smoothing out the draws and finding stuff you need. Okay, so I went for the Mud here. I got Spyro. Opponent goes for the Verdict. So as I said, like, you still have to get rid of the Neonates and the Muds, especially if you're playing a control deck. Okay, so I went for another red source here to play my Spyro. Discarded, puts 2 Samuts in the graveyard, sorry, 1, and the Fury, and left 1 Samut in a hand to attack next turn with haste. It also has double strike, so it's 6 damage, so it's pretty good. Okay, opponent goes for the Teferi to bounce one of the tokens. When you're playing the control deck, all of these threats are pretty much something you still have to deal with. You can't just let Seasoned Pyromancer continually attacking you. They had the Prismatic Ending, so unfortunately I didn't draw anything good here, but I got my Castle and find Samut with ability from the Scrapwork Mat. So I also get a draw from the turn here, and I got 6 mana to play a double spell here. My opponent was playing basically classic blue-white control, but they had a splash of Nahiri and the Miracle. So I discarded the Leyline Binding from their hand, leaving them with 2 Archmage's Charms and Prismatic Ending, which was pretty much useless in this situation. So Soulflayer did damage with a haste, and opponent can't bounce it, can't get rid of it because it's 6 mana. Prismatic Ending doesn't do much. So that was the game 1. So let's go to the game 2. Okay, in the game 2, I think this control matchup is fairly easy because you have the Muds, you have the Spyros. Even if they counter it, you still get the Unearthed. You get to a lot of ways really to play around counter spells. I mean, they can outvalue you if they get the big Teferi on the field, but they really have to deal with a lot before that happens. So I got the Mud and Neonate here, ready to cast Scavengers next turn, attack with haste. As you see, they really have to deal with these cards too, so they can't just forget about it. As you can see, in this version I played 2 Reavers. Actually, on my sideboard, instead of 2 Pet of Perils, I thought like in the sideboard games when I'm playing second in the creature against aggro matchups, I board this in and then get lifelink with the scavengers and to like beat all the decks that's trying to race you. But it wasn't really important decision. If I had a pet of perils here, I would just probably get the trophy. But yeah, so it was not a terrible decision, but not really important one. Okay, so my opponent attacks with Solitude. I decide to trade. We are both on one card in hand, and I have two Spirals, so pretty good situation for me. I'm pretty hopeless for the opponent. I again got the Soulflayer, and I played the Mud to discard Samut, and then I played the Soulflayer to give it immediately haste, double strike. So I think the Scrapwork Mud and Soulflayer really work well together. As you can see, this situation just immediately going for 10 damage with just these two guys with haste. It's pretty good. Okay, so that was the match one against Control. So let's go. Let's watch the next win, and we'll watch the defeat in the end. Okay, so this is a scam deck too, so sometimes you're just going to have turn 1 Grief scam, which is obviously pretty good. I also have Scavengers and the Samut, so I just need like a Scrapwork Mat or Neonate plus third land to have a pretty good hand without much chances for opponents to dealing with it. But opponent top decks a Lightning Bolt to immediately get rid of my Grief. And I was stuck. I also discarded Malakir's Rebirth from opponent's hand plus Terminate. So, but they found Bolt from the top, but we were both screwed for a lot of turns. They play Harvester, so at this point they had another Harvester, Ephemerate, and Spyro in their hand, and my draws were even worse than my opponent's. But I got another Grief, so I did the scam thing again. Discarded the Bolt, discarded the Spyro, leaving them in a hand with just Ephemerate, Harvester, and Priest. My opponent kills the Grief and continues attacking with the Harvester. So I still was in need to like top deck this turn land, but I just wasn't able to find it. And finally, on turn 8, I got my third land, so I was able to play the Spyro, which was great at this point. I also had another one in hand, so very efficiently blocking this Harvester. So I played my Scavengers, I got the double strike and haste, also cast my Fury to immediately kill the Harvester so they can't block, and now I'm able to attack with everything, so I get another trigger from the Scavengers and exile opponent's Spyro, and they concede, so that was it. Okay, let's watch the game 2. Again, decent hand. I have Grief, Feign Death, but I just didn't have a second black card. My opponent had similar problems. They had Grief, but no Undying Spell. So they got rid of my Feign Death. I top decked another one, but still didn't have another black card. But I was in a pretty good position. I got my third land. Also got the Soulflayer here, and I already got a Samut into graveyard, so pretty good. I go for the Soulflayer, of course, a 4/4 haste, double strike, vigilance. It's with a mat on the field. It's a 2-turn clock, and opponent didn't get the land, and I just two-shot them on my turn 4. It's the lethal, so that was it. So very quick games against a scam opponent. or it was not a scam, something similar like a Mardu scam, not a Rakdos one. Okay, again, a very high potential hand. So if you didn't notice, like with the Insolent Neonate, you can go for turn 2 Soulflayer, and this is like a great example of it, especially when you're playing against a deck like this one. And unfortunately, I didn't get my second land. If I get a second land, I could immediately play Soulflayer if it was a fetch, of course. That's it. So if I got the fetch immediately, I would be able to play a Soulflayer last turn, and my opponent would already be on 12. But I got to do Fury Scam last turn instead, and on turn 3 Soulflayer. So there are just multiple ways of me killing the opponent. So I had to kill the Karn so they don't exile my Fury too. I played my Mud in the meantime. They didn't have much, just went for Giganta hand. So I attacked the opponent for 10. Hold my Feint Death in case they do some mass removal or whatever. But they didn't find a solution for my creatures, and that was the game. Okay, so in the game 2, I had my 2 Thoughtseizes from the sideboard. I removed the Furies from the main and 2 of the Undying spells. Unfortunately, didn't have a Pet of Peril in this league, but had the useless Drogskull. What is it called? I had those. If I had the Pet of Perils, would probably get the trophy. I was just trying to experiment with that guy, like when you're playing against aggro on the draw, just replace Zetalpa with that guy, get lifelink, flying, double strike. It seemed like good in theory, but really not that useful in practice. So I removed Ancient Stirrings from my opponent's hand, and I left them with a Sphere, a Relic of Progenitus. I played some of my creatures, but they were lucky enough to find their throne very easily, and had the Golos. Golos didn't do much this turn, so I had a few turns to try to top deck Blood Moon or removal, whatever. Didn't get it, unfortunately. So next turn my opponent was able to start doing the Golos thing. I find a swamp in case I top deck my Blood Moon. So just go for the attacks here, put my opponent on 14, do the redraw with the Mud in case I find a Blood Moon or terminate. I didn't get it, so I just play the Spyro and find the Brotherhood's End, but it was too late. Opponent was able to do one Golos ability, and that was enough for them to win. They had Oblivion Stone, killing all my stuff, and then casting the Sundering Titan to kill my lands. And yeah, after they also had like Ulamog in hand. So after this, it was very hard to continue playing. Even if I kill the Titan with the Brotherhood's End, they still kill me with Ulamog. So that was it. Okay, I needed to go to the game 3 against Tron. Into game 3, I mulliganed to 6, kept a decent 6 cards. I had the Blood Moon. I had the potential of unfortunately not. I could have gone for the Verdant Catacombs on turn 1, but I wanted to find a swamp with it. So I went with Blood Crypt instead. Then I find something. I found this instead, and go for the Blood Moon. This means that I can't really cast either Grief or the Soulflayer, but they had like assembled Tron for the next turn, so I kind of had to go for it and wait for the top decks. Also, if I get the Undying spell, I'm able to still cast the Grief. So I go for it. I discard the Oblivion Stone. I see my opponent's hand. At this point, it was Karn, Sundering Titan, Chromatic Sphere. So opponent plays Expedition Map. I see their hand. I discard the Sundering Titan, leave Karn. They of course play the Karn, find the Ulamog. They plus the Karn, so I had to exile the Scrapwork Mat, but I got the Grief. This was very important top deck for me to get rid of the Ulamog. And I had the Soulflayer in hand, and I was counting on my opponent to minus the Karn this turn, which means I have potential of going for the Soulflayer next turn. Opponent attacks here, and I top deck the Samut from the top for the immediate kill. I could have attacked a Karn, put a Karn on one, play the Soulflayer, exile the Talpa, so Soulflayer will have flying double strike, which would mean, and indestructible, which would mean probable kill next turn, but I got a Samut from the top to kill opponent immediately, prevent them from top decking some stuff, and that was the game against Tron. Okay, so considering I can go like turn 1 Grief Scam, turn 1 Fury Scam, or turn 2 Soulflayer, or turn 3 Soulflayer, whatever, I think this deck has very good plan against Tron. I also have a Blood Moons on the sideboard, of course. But that was it. That was all the games against Tron. Let's go to the next game. Okay, so this is the last win from the league, match number 4. Let's see this one. This one was against Elves, so it's not very hard matchup for Fury Undying deck. Basically, I just my opponent played a bunch of Elves already on turn 2, and I was holding my Fury back, of course. My opponent saw a Stomping Ground here. I went for the Swamp. I did the Fury evoke, so probably they saw the Stomping Ground, so they probably felt like I'm maybe some Jund, and they just went for the Lord here to try to save their creatures. But I had, of course, the Feint and killed all their stuff anyway, so cleared all the boards. 5 creatures with 1 Fury, unfortunately 4 Elves. This is the card that makes their deck a lot worse. Okay, so I've got my Spyro, discarded some stuff, got the Scavengers in hand, got another Spyro, pretty good hand. After resolving the Fury on 1, it's very hard for my opponent to get back into this game. Opponent just chumps the Fury and check out the next turn draws. I had the Mud here, and I had the Soulflayer, which means Soulflayer has a flying double strike. They can't deal with this, so they concede. If I don't kill them this turn, I kill them next one. So that was game 1 against Elves. Let's check out the game 2. I had to mulligan this one. In the second hand, I had Fury plus a red card plus a Soulflayer. Also, Soulflayer is just very decent with when exiling Fury. It still gets double strike. It's a 4/4 double strike, so I think that's some cool interaction there. And you don't need that much of other useless cards that are just good when you discard them. So I had to hold the Samut in hand to use it on Fury. Again, I killed their board on turn 2, so like same start as the last game. Okay, so I play my Urborg Scavengers here, exile the Fury, get the double strike on my Scavenger, So each turn when Scavenger attacks, it gets a +1 counter, it gets bigger and bigger over time. It's a pretty good threat. Opponent was jumping it the entire game. I also played my Soulflayer as a blocker here. So my opponent goes for the Elvish War Master and plays the Copperhorn Scout, so they were left with 0 cards in their hand at this point. And I was unfortunately top decking just lands. I decided to go for the attacks here, try to pressure my opponent, try to pressure them into they have to block these scavengers. But they have the Copperhorn Skull here, so maybe it was better idea to leave the Soulflayer behind for the blocks. But I got opponent on 8 life, which means they didn't have much choice but to jump these scavengers every turn, which made a considerable advantage for me. Opponent just played another Lanovar, got a token, so they wasn't able to kill me. And I was able to play another Soulflayer just as a 4/4. And my scavenger was still lethal, so they had to jump it every turn. And we were kind of in a top deck mode. Each player trying to find the kill. But I was definitely in a better position, forcing my opponent to each turn have a blocker for these scavengers. I wasn't able to attack with all my guys for a few turns because the Burenton Forstender is an easy block for the Samut. And if I attack with everything, I risk them killing me in a swing back. So I play the Grief, and of course, just as a blocker attacker, they don't have they don't have more creatures. And this time I exiled their flyer from the graveyard, the Selfless Spirit, which they jumped last turn. So they forgot my scavengers get flying, and that was lethal. So that was the last win from the league, and we will now watch the only defeat was against a humans player. And really, I think this humans player really got good draws for the entire hand. Starting with the turn 1, I went for the Grief. Of course, they had the Solitude. They immediately exiled my Grief, but it wasn't a problem because I still had a Fury and another, I had a Dying Spell in hand, so it was a good against a humans deck. My opponent had Emeria and the Talia in hand and just a few lands, that was it. So I found my red spell here. I went for the Stomping Grounds. My opponent had 2 lands in hand and 1 mystery card, so I decided to go for the Fury Scam, but again opponent top decks Solitude, a second Solitude to kill my Fury, which was like it was really bad position for them, and they top decked like the only card which lets them survive. Continue playing this game. I played the Grief here just as attacker and or blocker, of course. They only had 1 planes in the hand at this point, so we were both in a top deck mode. But my deck really has a lot better top decks than the opponent's hand. I play another Grief. To prevent them from attacking or just to block the champion, of course. I do the trade, I find the Fury from the top to kill the Esper Sentinel, and now they have to get rid of the Fury, which is definitely not easy. I save the Mutt in hand in case I top another land, so I can discard it for a more useful card. I discard the Mutt here. I play the second Mutt from the grave from my hand. I put opponent on 8 life, and opponent did have some luck definitely here by top decking multiple solitudes, but still I had better top decks in the late game, so that was basically it. Playing 4 Season Pyromancers, 4 Scrapwork Mods, 4 Insolent Neonates means that you'll often just be able to find the stuff you need and discard the stuff you don't need in the longer games. Opponent, I had the Soulflayer kill for the next turn, and that was the game. Okay, so I won the game 1. Kept mediocre hands on game 2, but I had to terminate. Top decked just another land. I went for the Neonate here, they played Dauntless, so I had options like to do the redraw or trade. I decided to go for the trade. I wasn't able to kill the champion here because they had the Dauntless Bodyguard naming the champion. So I cast Terminate, but they protect it. Next turn, I go for the Brotherhood's End, and at this point, my opponent was like in a top deck mode. I had the Samut in hand, and I had a lot more cards than the opponent. Also, being able just to cast a Samut next turn is a very good blocker. So I felt like I'm in a pretty good position here. But my opponent finds a Sanctifier from the top of their deck, which complicated things a bit. In case I don't have the Talpa, it makes my Soulflayers much worse. Opponent also then top decked Adeline from the top of their deck, making their tempo even better. They did a mistake here by not attacking with Mutavolt. But that was probably because they had another Adeline, and I was in a pretty hard situation. So I top decked the Brotherhood then here. If this was like Path to Peril, I would be able to play the Brotherhood's End, the Path of Peril, and the Soulflayer, and maybe get back into the game. But yeah, that didn't happen. So it was time for game 3. But it was pretty unexpected loss because I had the Terminate. They ran out of gas. Then I had the Brotherhood's End, killing just one creature. And this is the card I had on the board for this league instead of Path of Peril. I thought like maybe this card will be okay. This card will be okay when I'm playing second against aggro decks, exactly like this one. So theoretically, my plan was to discard this guy, then get double strike lifelink, which is incredibly hard for my opponents to raise, especially opponent like this one. And I got the Fury scam here. I would be able to kill all of their stuff, but they had the Dauntless Bodyguard, so they were able to protect one of the champions. And yeah, now I wasn't able to play my Neonate because they revealed the 2 Chancellors. So I got this guy stuck in my hand at this point. Start attacking with the Fury. This means this is a 3-turn clock. But opponent finds Talia's Lieutenant from the top of their deck to continue attacking me for the 3 damage here. I get in with the Fury, and my opponent, I also top decked the Samut, which is like one of the few these type of cards I have in my deck. And the opponent again top decks the Sanctifier from the top of their deck, which meant they can attack with both of the creatures. And I got the second Samut, which made my hand just terrible. If I got like the Scrapwork Mod, the Neonate, the Season Pyromancer, whatever, it seems like a Chancellor of the Annex, the 2 guys they revealed at the start of the game, meant that I'm not able to resolve my Neonate. I had it countered by the Chancellor ability, and that was maybe the reason why I didn't succeed to win here. And that's it. That's it. Okay, so that were all the matches. That was the entire league. Pretty close to the trophy. Maybe one if I had the Pet of Peril. If that useless card was Pet of Peril, I would have won this match long ago, um, many turns ago. So yeah, if this was the original list, and that would definitely be the trophy. So immediately after that, I was considering Pet of Perils before the start, and it kind of at the last second I removed them just to test that card, and then of course, I will head them back for the future leagues. And I'm very satisfied with how this deck looked in the league. I'm satisfied how it performed. I feel like the having 8 of these Soulflayer effects. Soulflayer is a 2 mana 4/4, which is very useful in this kind of scam shell, where you can go like turn 1 Grief, turn 2 or turn 3 is Soulflayer. Even if you don't have like anything in the graveyard, you will often just have a Grief or the Fury to give it double strike or menace or whatever. Also, if you have the Scavengers, you don't have to have the card immediately in the graveyard with effect. You can put it there later, and then on the attacks, you can exile that card and get the effect. So far, I'm really satisfied with how this looks. I think in the league it performed very well. A lot of the times, Soulflayer copying the Samut was just too brutal, too strong for the opponent, and also too surprising. I think Neonate has like very high potential in deck to be able to go for the turn 2 Soulflayer. Also, I kind of feel that I need 12 of these enablers to be able to consistently get the cards I want in the graveyard and to find stuff I need and discard the stuff I don't need, like these undying spells that sometimes get stuck into the hand. Also, these spells sometimes can get stuck in the hand. That is why I think the 12 of these discard effects are necessary to be able to play this. And that's it. Of course, there are also Grief and Furies there that can that help with getting rid of these cards from the hand. But you really want to do to have this kind of effect to kind of have the consistency, better consistency by cycling cards from your hand, discarding the ones you don't need and getting the ones you need. Okay, so that is it. Hope you liked the video. Hope you liked the gameplay. If you want to help the channel, click like, click subscribe, comment in the video. Also, there is now a link on my channel for the Discord, where you can see all of my brews before they get to the YouTube. And I put daily brews there. Okay, so that is it. And for today, and until the next time.